Hello, everyone, and thanks so much for joining today. We're going to give everybody a few more minutes to log in and get settled, and we'll begin the webinar in about 2 or 3 minutes. Hello again, everyone. Welcome to today's panel discussion, Conversations with Transformative Researchers, How Research is Changing and What It Means. A few logistical notes before we get started. You'll see 2 different ways to communicate with us throughout the webinar, the chat box and the Q&A box. Please use the chat box for all technical issues and the Q&A box for any questions related to the content of the webinar. With that, I'd like to introduce our panelists for today. Our moderator, Zoe Dowling, SVP of Research here at Focus Vision, is an eclectic blend of researcher, technologist, sociologist, and marketer with a rich background across functions, industries, and countries. Our first panelist is Shelley Warren, Research Manager at the Detroit Pistons, who leads research and insights, supporting data-driven decision-making throughout the business organization. Our next panelist, Tiffany Ng, Director of Consumer Insights at Experian, focuses on putting the customer at the center of strategic initiatives. Tiffany's focus on Agile platforms enables her team to deliver quicker and more insights. And last, but certainly not least, Krista Hilton, Senior UX Researcher and Ethnographer at ADP. She considers herself a strategic ninja, seamlessly connecting human behavior and technology, and has a deep passion to understand what she coins the emotion of things. At this time, our panelists, they're going to jump right into the discussion. Zoe, would you like to get started?
I absolutely would. Thank you very much, Rachel. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for spending this next 50 or so minutes with us. I, for one, am extremely excited about today's webinar and the conversation that we're going to have. So you can see, really, this is a conversation all about where we are with research, how it's changing, what this means, and really just an opportunity to have a conversation, something we don't always get to have, but really interesting to take a moment, time out to talk about where we are, where it's going, things that are on our mind. And certainly we've got 3 wonderful panelists here, and I'm going to be talking and introducing them slightly more in a moment. But this is also somewhere where we really encourage your participation. There is a question and answer box. Please do put in questions. I'll be watching that as we go, and we certainly look to interject that in the different sections. We've got 4 topic areas we're going to cover over the next while. So please do put your questions in, and we'll be looking to answer those. So with that, as you can see, Rachel's already introduced our panelists, but I think it'd be fun to get to know them in a slightly different way. So what I'm going to do is ask each of you, and good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. Let's start with you, Shelley. Tell me, how did you get into market research? How did you find yourself in this wonderful world of customer insights?
I've only been in the research and customer insights world for about the last 4 years. Prior to that, I was in project management at advertising and marketing companies. Knowing that marketing, you can only trust the gut feel in marketing so much, right? As Google Analytics was becoming more prevalent, and I realized that a lot of my clients were going to want more analytical answers to marketing. So I went back and got my master's degree in business analytics and ended up in market research, which is the combination of all my experience and my training. And I love it.
Love it. Thank you, Shelley. We're looking forward to hearing more from you. So let's just go along the line here. Tiffany, how did you end up in this space?
Yeah, so I fell in love with data really early in my career. I started out as a marketing analyst for different industries, and realized that as I was telling all of these stories with data, there was just something missing, which was the humans or the consumers that really represented the data. And so I was very heavy on the quant side, and really had crafted my skill as a storyteller, and then I wanted more, and so I moved over to Experian about 7 years ago under the guise of market research to try and figure out, going back to my roots of what I studied in school, I really wanted to understand what drove behavior. And so I've been doing market research ever since.
Love it. Thanks, Tiffany. And Krista, how about you?
Well, I think mine maybe even predated all of that, right? Like maybe when I was like 4, I always have asked why, which was probably pretty annoying as a child, right? But that I've really seen that kind of be my trajectory, both professionally and personally. I have my background in psychology and then sports psychology, and then my PhDs in research management statistics, where I solely focused a lot more on qual methodologies, still with a bit of quant there as well. And I have the academic space as well as the corporate space across many industries. And I've been in the HCM space now for about 3 years at ADP. And I'm thrilled that I get to actually, take all of those things that I've done over all of the years, and I actually get to put it into practice because I find human behavior so fascinating. So that's a little bit about me.
Yeah, that's great. And you can already see the themes. I think, everybody's come from different backgrounds, but it's definitely the unifier, understanding human behavior. What's missing? Tiffany, you talked about, hey, there was things missing, the why missing in the data you're looking at before, the storytelling aspect. Shelley, I love you can't rely on your gut. We need the data, and not all data can tell you what's going on, and certainly Google Analytics can't tell you that why. And Krista, yeah, you're all about the why. So I think that's those are the things, and I think those are the things that we find with everybody potentially, coming into market research, coming from very eclectic backgrounds, but there's these unifiers as why you would be in here. Love to hear from people in the audience of where you came from, and maybe we can see how disparate fields that we've all come from and found ourselves in this position, wanting to understand people better, and how also from that perspective to make our brands and our organizations work better for those people. So diving into our first topic, research approaches. This is much more of the nuts and bolts, and just for everybody in the audience here. So we at Focus Vision, we recently, maybe you participated in it, we did a short survey just saying, how do you research? Because I know that I'm always curious as what are you doing in your day-to-day life, within your organization? What kind of research are you using? What kind of research approaches? So we're going to use the findings from this as just a way to guide the conversation. If you're interested in sort of the full, we've got an infographic that's on our website. So we'll cover some of the topics here. And the first one is on research approaches, the nuts and bolts. How are we asking those questions? How are we getting to the why? And as you can see here, it's not very surprising that most of us are asking surveys, asking the questions through surveys, quantitative research, and then you've got your staples of your in-depth interviews, your IDIs, and your focus groups. And then more so, and again, as an ethnographer, Krista, you might have some thoughts on this around, these usability ethnography online communities aren't used quite as much, but they are still part of the mainstream. Before sort of handing it over and getting your thoughts from the panelists here, one thing we did notice within this year, and I should point out we did it last year, so the green is this year, the blue is last year, within our qualitative interviewing and focus groups, we did see a slight decline. It's not statistically significant, but I did kind of think it was notable. And particularly when we dived into large organizations, those with 1,000 or more, we're seeing that they're leading this kind of depth and focus group. So it declined year on year 14%. And then IDIs declined 16%. So interesting shift. We'd have to see what happens next year. But I have to put it out there. Are we moving towards the depth of the focus group? because I know we love to talk about that, and certainly since the 80s. So I'd love to hand it over to one of you, maybe Krista. I've already called you out for your approaches, so we'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
So I'm thrilled to see the rise, obviously, in ethnographic on-site research, right? Because that's kind of my day in and day out. I'm fortunate I get to run an enterprise-wide contextual inquiry program. So I always feel like I'm on the forefront of expressing why that's so important. So I'm lit up to see those results. We're still designing for people. So it's super helpful to be spending that time with them in their spaces and to kind of see those spaces between, right? There's a lot that's said in silence with body language and things of that nature. And I think those moments are golden. As far as focus groups, I will probably have to defer to some of my colleagues here. I maybe do 1 or 2 a year. As far as hearing from a lot of my other colleagues and researchers that I've worked with over the years, there seems to be, I would concur with the results that you found there, that there's probably a bit of a decline in that, right? But I think people are often so in need at times just to get research, right? That sometimes focus groups seem to make sense from a price point and from also being able to get a certain sample size of folks. So I would definitely have to look to maybe Shelley and Tiffany to get their perspectives more on focus groups.
Yeah, I'll jump in here. Yeah, you're right. Focus groups are expensive and they're time consuming. And I think, I wonder if the decline is really reflective of these other companies that you've got a lot of research and technology companies coming together to create more agile research methodologies. And so at face value, it really looks like you can get rid of those focus groups and rely on those more online, faster methodologies. I think we still do focus groups. We do them, a handful of times a year. I think there's a lot of value in really understanding consumers in group settings, depending on what you're looking for and what you're trying to understand. We also do online communities. We also do a ton of surveys. And so for us, it's really just a balance and a mixture of all of those different methodologies coming into play so that we can tell a more holistic story about what that consumer journey is for us.
Okay.
And at the Pistons, I started out just as a project manager, essentially, of some existing surveys that they do through individual vendors and some that are recommended by the NBA. So they didn't venture into focus groups any more than, we have a great venue for that, right? You bring some fans in, you put them in a club or a suite, you ask them some questions, but nothing formal as far as a moderated focus group. And I think with us being really focused on what we can DIY and all of the new technology available, as I'm trying to grow what we do here, I'm not sure that a traditional focus group is part of our future plans as we develop.
Interesting. So I hear a lot of different things in there. Loving the thing of designing for people, because that's what we're doing. And even the research that we design is for people. So that's something that resonates with me. And also around getting the holistic approach and using the right, I think there's a theme of using the right approach for the question at hand. And also to get that holistic view. I'm seeing some comments, and I think it would be great to get your reactions. And maybe the first is more of a statement, and I do, because this resonates with me. Love that a lot is said in silence. I think there's a lot we can get from observing. And Krista, I'm gonna maybe leave you to respond to this, but also with the question: what does ethnographic research mean exactly?
Sure. So, if we think on the anthropological side of things and sociological, already think Margaret Mead, who spent a lot of time with cultures in their space, understanding them both as an outsider and then sometimes as an insider. Obviously, within most of our spaces with the bandwidth and resources, we're not spending that amount of time with folks in that traditional sense. However, when I'm speaking towards that, I'm spending time with people in their space, observing what it is they do, how they do it, and also more importantly, why they do it. I'm also asking them deeper questions to kind of get underneath what they're doing and how they're doing. But to do that, you really have to be in the spaces of what people are doing, right? So for what I do, I spend a lot of time with professionals that are in the human capital management space. Depending on where you are, if you were looking at users who are using a particular app, you may actually be in their homes with them, spending time with them. I've done that as well. So that's what that means to me. And from that, you are bringing these rich understandings. You're spending a lot of time with them in their space, right? And then coming back with these rich understandings of not only what you hear from them, but also those spaces between, right? Because to me, those are where those gaps for innovation really exist, because people tend to think they know what they want, but they don't always necessarily know what they want, right? And so that's where I come in to kind of bridge that gap of human behavior and technology.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think it's right. People don't always know what they want, or certainly not able to articulate it, because it's not something we sit and do all the time. It's thinking about, I really want this. If only, and so that's our job to go in and do. A couple of other comments, and I think this is interesting. Somebody saying, I've been doing market research for 30 years and seen the pendulum swing from quant to qual and back several times. Where do you all think we are in this piece? In fact, I'm going to add in another comment from somebody saying, the proliferation of secondary research seems to have an impact on the desire or need for qual. So you can get an idea or a general overview of relevant information just by browsing research that's already been done. So how does that fit into, in your view, the sort of where we are with the qual, quant, and then I think now there's maybe also this big data, this the behavioral data, the transactional data. That wow, where does that put us in the pendulum? Big question there, Tiffany. I'm going to look at you.
Yeah, you're right. I'm looking at Susan's comment right now, and I have not been in the industry for 30 years, but it even within my smaller tenure, when I came in, I was so heavy on quant, and big data was such a big thing, and it still is. And there are a lot of people who say data. You just need to look at big data. You just need to look at behavioral data, what people are doing, and that really can take the place of a lot of the qual research that's happening right now. But I beg to differ. I think that there's a lot of value in really looking, like observing people, understanding them in their environment with these ethnographic studies, looking to see how they react with pressure with their peers and focus groups. I think that's really important to observe. And yeah, I think there's always going to, like anything else, there's always going to be trends and things like that. But there's definitely value in each of these methodologies to tell that bigger story of the why and the what to come together. And I think, yeah, secondary research, we look at that all the time. We're always trying to understand different things. We have it to help support or supplement other research that we do. And so there's definitely value in that as well.
Makes sense. Shelley, I'm curious from your perspective, I think out of the group, you're the newest, as you were, to this space. And I think that fresh lens on it is really informative. How do you think about, do you see, because this is a lot of our perceptions going into, I see a divide between qual and quant. And also maybe just other data sources, the big data sources. What do you think about all of that, and how do you sort of view and categorize the different ways that you can ask questions or gather information about people?
So coming in, like you said, newer to the industry, it's a really exciting time to be entering the industry where, I see it going through all this transformation, even as I'm learning, the ABCs of one methodology. It's changing and becoming more streamlined, more informative. So as I'm teaching myself these things, the easiest thing, obviously, to teach myself was quant, right? To do a survey. I'm got an analytics background, so that was my comfort zone. But as I'm growing and learning in this, I'm realizing the limitations there, right? It self-reported information, the things that you can't get out of just asking an online survey. And I'm starting to put some things in place here where I get to spend more time with our fans, more time with some of our operations people, and not like technically an ethnography, but really seeing we call it a driveway to driveway. Like when you are leaving for a game, what do you experience from point A to the arena, and then you experience the game itself. and what do you, what is it, what is your experience afterwards? Do you stick around to enjoy the Detroit area, or do you head home, and what is traffic like? Just every piece of that. And so trying to get richer data, I'm venturing more into quant and out of my comfort zone, as it were.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, and because like you say, you can, the interesting thing about surveys is that it's also us as a researcher designing them. I mean, just like the discussion guide for the qualitative. But there's less scope for a participant to come back and say, or answer it in the way that they want to answer it. And I'd be the first to say, hey, even with this survey that we're using as we go into the next section here around frustrations, this was mine and others on our team. Our perceptions of what your frustrations might be, we did leave an open-ended box, but we guided the responses here. So that's the problem of Quant as well with the surveys. You're putting the framework out there, and if you haven't done the qual to kind of maybe get all the information that needs to, or the answer options, as it were, to guide the drafting of the questionnaire, then you're also putting a lens on it, and we don't always think about it that way, in my view. Let's move on to, I think, the fun topic. I know this is going to be really quick because nobody's got any frustrations, right? It's all easy. So again, this is just the top 5, and you'll see there's a 6th I'll talk in a minute. But when we were like, what's your biggest frustrations with where you are today with research and so on? And I don't think it's any surprise. We are all still very heavily beating to this better, faster, cheaper drum, and that's not going to go away. I think that's just the mantra, that is just business today, and certainly insights today. So no surprises that budgets are top of mind. Quality, particularly sample, and I feel that this we didn't specify whether this is qual or quant, might be leaning more towards the quant, but I feel that I've heard a lot that this is with qualitative as well. It's how do we get the people to speak to? How do we know that we're speaking to the right people, to quality participants in the sense that they are doing the research in this sort of the same good faith that we are intending it to be taken. The integration of data sources and also combining qual and quant, and we've already been talking about that, and maybe an industry specific. One of the things I wanted to point out, and I said it wasn't the top 5, but this whole idea of managing multiple research technology providers, and I brought that out because, again, you can see with large enterprises that's kind of jumped up on the interest here year and year. And I think we talk about technology a lot, and so I'm curious from all of your perspective, not just what your frustrations are, and are they covered here? What's a frustration for you that's kind of top of mind that keeps you awake at night, or certainly it's something you wake up thinking about that maybe is not on here. But I would also be interested in your perceptions. I mean, technology's infiltrated all of our lives, personally, professionally, every industry. It's definitely also part of research today, inescapable. And so what's your view on where we are with technology and research technology? Shelley, why don't I hand this over to you?
So technology is one of the things I love about coming into this industry. I've got an analytical background, a technology background in training and in some of my experience. So I think that had technology not been such a large part of what research is today, it wouldn't be as attractive to me personally. So I love being able to investigate new ways to bring opportunity in research to the Pistons outside of what they've traditionally recognized, because we can do it more easily now, more well-rounded, full information without huge investment in time and manpower from our end. So,
and just whilst we've got you, what's so there's obviously the draw of technology, and not necessarily just technology as a frustration, but what's one of your things that you would wish to change, or that you're actively trying to change, sort of a frustration, as it were?
Well, internally, the proliferation, the usefulness, and I think this is something everybody in research struggles with, is making sure that the research you do impacts the business and is used, how it's used going forward. And obviously in order to provide meaningful research, you need the budget and the manpower and the time to do it. So it would be the opportunity to do research that's really my frustration.
That's interesting. Tiffany?
Yeah, I would say we at Xgreen we're really data heavy. We have a ton of data on a lot of things and people, and so market research, it's tough to get in what a lot of folks call soft metrics, right? So we've got a lot of hard data, hard metrics, and then when we start to talk about how people are feeling and what people are thinking, it's always difficult to do that. But we've made some progress, and I think right now our biggest frustration is around the display of these. So integrating all of this information, all of this data from different sources, and now really having some great dashboards for not just one type of methodology or one solution, but really taking it in, right? You know, Tableau's a great example, but it's technical for some folks, right? And it's not as easy to do. And we just need something that's a little bit more consumer friendly or employee friendly. I mean, to get these stories out there without so much back work. I feel like it's 2019 and there's so much technology with other things that these dashboards and displays to be able to integrate a lot of stuff would be really helpful for our business.
So knowledge share within the organization.
Yeah.
And if I picked up on something else, it's knowledge share and also convincing or showing that this feels like a softer way. This is not, you know, when you're looking at Google Analytics, we know exactly, yes, they went from that page to that page to that page, whereas this is much more touchy-feely, you know, this is how they're feeling about something. And so it's sort of the confidence that this is really valid data. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. I think one of the things that we can't get from 100% from this behavioral data is really what people's expectations are coming into our product and coming into our site, and are we meeting those expectations, right? And it's hard to tell solely based off of where they've come from or what pages they clicked on before they got to us. So asking those questions straight out and just trying to figure out, are we, you know, did you come here to get what you needed, has been really helpful for us. Yeah. How do we marry that with, you know, X% of folks came in and they said they came in for this, and are we meeting their expectations? That's huge for us. Yeah,
that makes sense. Chris, I'm curious. So before you go into your frustrations, and maybe this is one of them, do you ever come up with, you know, as an ethnographer, there's perhaps definitely on the less tangible sort of data side of it, and do you come across that kind of hurdle barrier that, well, maybe that's just your opinion, like, you know, or maybe the beliefs or proof points on this is, you know, this is real data?
Sure. Yes, I come across that daily. My kind of remedy towards that, or the path that I take for that, is to engage people early and often, right? So that they are part of it, so that it, you know, research is not done in a vacuum. It's not meant to be done in a vacuum. And I think, you know, and I know over my career, I've been a solo researcher in a lot of ways, which has probably been one of those tricks of the trade to start engaging people with me, whether it's designers or developers or engineers or product folks as well, right? The more you can get people engaged, the more they're hearing it as well. And they're not just hearing one-offs. They can participate in multiple you know, sessions, whether it's phone sessions or on-site sessions, so that they are starting to hear the themes as well, right? Rather than the whole self-fulfilling prophecy of something they think they're going to go into here and they hear it with one person and they're sold. It's really important, I think, to continue that engagement and keep people feeling like they're engaged in it as well. So that is something that I'm always striving to make that an easier and more efficient process. So yes, I do feel that. As far as frustrations and saying, and going kind of back to, you know, research isn't done in a vacuum, you know, it's very iterative and it builds, the qual and the quant as well, and they should inform each other. And I think a space that I'm always navigating and wanting to understand how to do it better is the knowledge share space that, you know, that Tiffany brought up. I have the opportunity to work within and across products all the time. And so to get this rich information, this more foundational ethnographic information out to people, you know, people who need it or people who are even interested in it, or people that it will actually drive what they're doing, That's really important. And that's, some days it's working better than others.
Mm. Yeah, I think that ability to have a central place for different types of data, and very, very different types of data, and displaying it in a way that really makes sense is an increasing need. Just before we move on, Shelley, I'm curious, how are things in terms of knowledge share and communicating out the insights from your side? Have you got the golden goose? Have you figured out how that all works? Is that something that you come across as a challenge, a frustration?
One of the benefits of being here is our vice president of IT and analytics is a champion for research. So he has given me a voice, which is great. He has pulled together, I get to have a monthly meeting with heads of all of our different departments in ticket sales and marketing, in corporate partnerships and operations, and just tell them what I've been up to that month, and we found a lot of synergy in getting to share that information, even if it's a guest experience survey that marketing should really know about it, even though it's not exactly something they're responsible for. It helps color some of their decisions just to know that information. So I get that audience, and then I also have I get to sit in on some of their staff meetings. So I get to, kind of figure out what their questions might be before they even realize that that's something I can help with. So I wouldn't know if it's the golden goose exactly, but it is really, it's nice to have a champion in my corner.
Sure, it makes sense. And I think, so different organizational sizes going on here. I know, Shelley, you're going to be on the smaller end compared to Experian and ADP. But I guess for everyone, it is definitely having that the champion and buy-in from particularly the executive levels and down, but across the board as well, and being able to have that visibility. So again, something that is when I use the word easier, I use that lightly, but easier or more attainable in a smaller organization and it's just an ongoing challenge, I think, for everyone, but certainly larger the organization with tens of thousands of people starts to become extremely challenging, and that's, I think, all departments are facing that, and it's but it's definitely something that we're grappling with. All right, let's move on for I think a more kind of fun. I mean, trends, buzzwords. We all love them. When I think of buzzwords, we've had storytelling for a long time. We've had maybe AI. Oh, there was blockchain. Now that was big. Was it last year or the year before? And it's just kind of quietly gone away. Well, we'll see if that comes back. But this was something interesting. What are the trends? And hopefully they're not just buzzwords, but actually just developments that you're interested in or you're following. And we asked that within the survey. Mobile, and this is an aggregation of all different types of mobile, be it mobile qual, mobile surveys, diaries, ethnographies, dashboarding, whatever. But mobile remains something that we're interested in. Although I personally have some thoughts about we should be doing a little bit more on mobile, but maybe we'll come back to that. But other things, we hadn't asked about data visualization, artificial intelligence, or automation before in the year before, but they did come up. I'm just going to throw out there as a conversation opener. I was surprised that say AI, automation, and data visualization didn't actually just spike a lot more. What do you all think about that? What's on here that you're following that isn't on here or is on here? Would love to hear what are you keeping your eye on and what's of real interest to you? Tiffany, should we start with you?
Sure. Yeah, what this data tells me here, I'm looking at it, is that we don't have those things that come to the top. We don't have them quite right yet, right? And I think that they're definitely trends, and they probably align nicely with what we still need as researchers. Great mobile technology around our surveys, great data visualization, being able to sufficiently integrate qual and quant methodologies. I think AI and Agile research are big for me specifically, you know, we can ask people all day long what they want and what they think that they want, and it's really being able to leverage these different types of methodologies to get at the underneath and what's driving their decision making and things like that. And Agile Research at Experian, we've over the last several years, we've brought on a lot of really great innovative companies for research that really keep us in this iterative mode to always want more and strive for better. And I think that that's something we're always talking about now. We've been doing it for a few years now, so I don't know if it's still a trend. I think it should just be a way of how we do things. However, you know, with that comes a lot of responsibility as a researcher to be able to say, okay, like we've got all of these quick and fast and easy research methodologies, but we need to take a step back and really understand what's driving that methodology, what's behind it, what's underneath it, so that we're not taking it just at face value, but we're really keeping the validity of these methods true to what research should be. And so while I'm getting off topic, and this is my soapbox here, I think that you know, Agile Research is a big one for us. I have a small team. There's just 4 of us, and so as we move into different parts of the business and we support all parts of the business, it's really important for us to be efficient, effective, making sure that our research gets out there so that people are really taking those insights and moving forward with that. And that Agile Research and these companies that are coming up with it and they're super smart with it are really helping pave the way for that.
That makes sense. Krista, what do you have thoughts for what Tiffany said, and also just for the trends that you're following?
Sure. I actually have something to kind of build on that, because I think, you know, when you think about the work that I typically do, the foundational work, I almost see that operating in a very agile function as well, with like the integrated qual and quant and artificial intelligence and machine learning, right? Because there is something to knowing what those foundational behaviors are. And now we have the smarter technologies to also pull from, right? So the foundational behaviors can not only inform, you know, all of the AI and machine learning, but there's something to also going back and kind of, you know, checking into it a bit, right? Not necessarily always taking that at face value. You know, I think, you know, I remember always going back to Trisha Wang's conversation about the quantifiable bias, right? So I think we need to kind of have our checks and balances in place to cyclically kind of make sure iteratively that we're on the right track and headed in the right direction. It shouldn't be just one and done, right?
Yeah. That makes sense. I've got some thoughts, but I'm going to, Shelley, where are you netting out in this?
Well, it's interesting because as I'm, you know, coming into the research scene, I was handed some research projects that existed and happen on an annual basis. And part of my learning was to reverse engineer them and figure out why they're doing what they're doing and how it happens behind the scenes. And one of the things I've been able to do as I've learned is to do things myself so that I can, as we grow, know who to ask for help and what types of skills I'm looking for in a supplier, and what automation would look like in my world, and how artificial intelligence may help me, just by doing all the hands-on, making sure we're getting the right answers with the stuff we're using currently. So it's I'm glad that it's great to learn from these larger companies who are, like Tiffany said, paving the way in developing some of these things so that they become more accessible for smaller shops like me.
Yeah, that makes sense. So so much in here. I'm going to ask each of you, because when I think of, I have my understanding. So let's just take iterative research. I understand I think I understand what you all mean by that, because I've got my own views on it. But let's go around quick fire. Tiffany, what do you mean by iterative research?
Iterative research to me is just building on things that you've learned, right? So we support our product team as well, and our advertising team. And so we really push to have research done at the very beginning when it's in, even before wireprint, when it's in napkin form, testing that, getting reactions, and then coming back and saying, okay, this is what people are saying. How can we optimize this? Or is this really getting at what you wanted? Are your value propositions coming through? And then going back and testing again. And with these research companies that allow for really quick surveys online, or having access to an online community, we're able to do that in a much quicker time than just 5 years ago.
Okay, that's good. So iterative, building on maybe smaller chunks, and just continually building upon that knowledge.
Exactly. Yes.
Shelley, Krista, is that the same as you would have? Any differences?
Yeah, I think it fits my definition in that, our world is so seasonal. So, I get to ask, try to find interesting ways to ask the same questions year after year, so growing each research project annually to know, to fine tune it to get to better information that can help us with data-driven decisions.
That makes sense. Krista, I'm going to ask you, what does Agile mean to you?
So Agile means to me, when I think of like the behavioral analytics, right? And then kind of heat mapping to where I should be focusing as far as contextual ethnographic work that then can drive discovery work, that then can drive, from the napkin drawings to high level fidelity, wireframing to usability, right? And then over again. That to me is what I think of when that comes to mind. So
drawing upon, sort of taking a starting point and then drawing upon that and using all of that and shifting gears, is that fair?
Well, I don't know. I think, to the same point that Tiffany made, they are building upon, but I think if there are moments where you kind of are stopped in your tracks, right? And you're like, whoa, like we thought we were really hearing this and now we're starting to hear something else. I think there are moments to pivot. And I think that's why that iterative process is very important. And it's important to do even steps within all of those different methodologies, right? Which are agile in and of themselves. And those can be little microbursts. Think of them as little sprints, or think of them as larger sprints, right? It all depends on the need and what the questions are.
Yeah, that makes sense. I had a quick question from someone in the audience. Is Agile the same as Lean UX then?
I think it's all in who you talk to.
Yeah.
That would be my honest question, my honest response. I also think, we could all probably sit here and define research very differently. It depends on who you talk to. And that's probably part of the challenge.
Yeah, I agree with that. And that was why I just thought, let me pause and just check that we're all talking about the same things when we're talking about iterative, when we're talking about Agile. What do we mean by that? Because again, I think with some of these, and I could go through all of these because I was thinking, I'm curious that you're talking about AI being helpful. I mean, AI is, obviously quite a large, what do we mean by that? Like, and again, I think it's just going to depend on, sort of using AI, deep learning, maybe knowledge models within for applying to Quant versus applying to qualitative data could be different things. So big open field there. I want to go on to, so we've also got some time that there's questions come in that I haven't got to, so I want to leave some time at the end for that. But I do want to make sure that we can have a little bit of discussion around this one, because I think that this kind of final question is a fun one. And I think it's one that we all ask ourselves a lot, maybe individually and what we're looking to do with our careers and where we're going to progress, but also collectively as an industry. What is the future role of the researcher? Where are we going? Maybe this should also be what's the current role, because that's certainly shifting. But what do you see the future role of the researcher is? Shelley, I think let's kick off with you.
Well, my goal for my future in research is to become a strategic partner and be involved, even like Tiffany said, from the beginning of projects to the end, and provide insights all the way through. Really of trying to avoid becoming an order taker here, and as a smaller department of one, it's easy for people just to come to me and give me a little one-off request, and it's easy, if it's easy enough, I'll just run with it. But to be involved all the way through and to be a more strategic partner is what I think the future role of the researcher would be.
Okay. Tiffany?
Yeah, this is something I'm becoming more and more passionate about. You know, when I first started in market research, to Shelley's point, it's you know, very reactive. You're waiting for your internal clients or stakeholders to ask you these questions, and you know, you try and find the answers. And I think you know, with a lot of these different technologies coming in and different methodologies that we have access to now, you know, our role is shifting more to be more consultative. I've seen it here where they're really looking for us to drive a lot of the strategy based on, you know, what consumers and customers are telling us. You know, in this experience economy that we're all in, and everything is about the experience and how people are thinking about brands in different ways now. What is it that people are generally wanting to do with their time and with their money, and are we on the right track for that? And so as we are doing things quicker, and we're doing more things quicker, there's really a need for this agile and iterative approach to research. But at the same time, as I mentioned before, the methodologies that are underpinning these technologies are really important. And so I think just kind of stepping back and saying, hey, you know, these are things that you have to have in your technologies, or these are the way you have to ask these questions, and you have to always have this sample size, you know, different little things like that, I think is going to be even more important than ever as we move into a faster pace economy with just trying to understand more and more consumers.
Yeah. Krista, before I let you go, I have to say thank you. I know we're all like that. Something that I firmly believe in is we can't let go of the foundation. Like, no matter if we're in doing iterative, agile, whatever, you know, way that we're approaching it, we've got to understand how to ask questions. We've got to think about the people that we're speaking to, and these foundations to good, solid research that we definitely can't let go of. Even while, and I fully, again, hands up, classically trained researcher. So yes, I might err on this side, but I do have that. Whilst I'm fully embracing the DIY, I'm fully embracing, like, you know, let's go and let's meet business needs today, but let's just not forget what are the good, you know, we need good data. So that's my plug. I don't know, Krista, what do you think on that?
Well, I think, you know, I go back, I'm with you, right? I'm on the traditional side of things, but also bringing together the technology, right? Because that's kind of our role. We are these bridge builders. I look at myself even as like the relationship strategist. I spend a ton of my time negotiating and making authentic connections with both my clients, you know, my users, as well as the people that I work with. And I think you need to do that so that it allows me to constantly not only be looking for where our gaps of opportunity are, not only within our products, but also where our gaps of opportunity are across the enterprise. So I spend a lot of time listening to people and understanding what it is they're doing, not only when I'm traveling the country and spending time with my clients, but also when I'm with my colleagues. And I think that's also our evolving role, right? We are constantly almost rebranding ourselves in a lot of ways, which I think, you know, I think of researchers that are earlier on in their careers, right? And I can see that being both exciting and intimidating at the same time. And I have those conversations with researchers that I mentor often, right? And then for those of us who've been doing this for however many years, we don't want to get into that, right? But we've had that experience, and we can also appreciate this rebranding and have that holistic view of the multiple hats that we wear and how we can strategically place ourselves to help our organizations work smarter and more efficiently.
Yeah, and so I'm hearing from all of you, and I just kind of jotted down. So relationship strategist, as you said, Krista, strategic partner, that's what you kicked off with Shelley, and I think consultative, Tiffany. I mean, it's all been part of how do we not just I love this, move away from being the order taker or being reactive. Like you said, you know, how do we just like, oh my goodness, like what's gone on? Well, what is going on? How to look ahead, and how to be that strategic, play that strategic role within the organization. Because to go to where you've just said, Chris, it's about listening. Like I do think that there's the interesting position that the researcher sits in, or the insights. Again, the language all changes to how we're named, but it's both that internal and external view on the company. So if we're listening to our customers and what's going on in their lives and understanding them, but we're also listening to our stakeholders and what are their challenges and what are they grappling with. And so I don't know if this is my hope, but certainly where I yeah, maybe it's a hope, or where I see it's going is that the researchers in this kind of function can really just be a real central hub of an organization, because it's got a good understanding on both sides. And I'm going to use the word impartial. I don't know if that's fair or not, but it's our goal is to facilitate understanding. It's to facilitate how can we do things better. And so maybe there is a little bit of a neutral territory there. Here's our customers, this is what we're doing. Here's, I know, the challenges that you stakeholders are grappling with, and how do we bring that all together so it's like that voice of the organization from all aspects. Does that, I mean, is that the holy grail? Is that where we're looking to go? Maybe,
yeah. I think having a seat at the table is super important, right? I mean, I feel like I've been striving to do that, and it feels good to be there. But you've got product and marketing and sales, and and everybody's representing different parts of the business. And in addition to being a support function to all of these, it's to really having a seat at that table to independent of what you're supporting them with, what is the one thing that can drive the business forward? And I think that's the future role.
Yeah.
I think we're also these agents of cultural change as well, right? Not only within the space of UX and research as a whole, but within our organizations and across our organizations. And I know that's something I don't take lightly, and that I love every day about what I get to do. And then bringing folks in so that not only you have a seat at the table, but you have seats at multiple tables, so that people are also engaging you as much as you're engaging them. And I think that's really exciting when you're able to figure out how to do that.
That's been my mission for the past couple of years, is to increase the reach of research here at the Pistons. And just, I put together, I categorized all of the research that we do annually into the six questions that I can answer. So, hey, if you want to know who our customers are, what they think of us, what they think of our sponsors, if that idea just pops into your head, to come ask me about it. Because if I don't have the answer, I can find it for you. So it's just trying to be top of mind and help them find the questions they may not even realize they have.
That makes a lot of sense. And I think it's it's a struggle for everyone. I've seen a comment saying, thank you for the conversation, because it's making them feel better about their own struggles. We're all struggling, and I think it's not just us. I feel like organizations, business is changing full stop. And it's changed so rapidly. We just take marketing and how much that's changed in the last 5 to 10 years. Sort of 10 years ago, there was none of the so-called MarTech stack, and now there's over 7,000 companies in the Lumascape. If you look at that, things are just changing so quickly, and responding to how culture and society and just the world's changed. And so we're all kind of grappling with this. And I, for one, am a big fan of talking about how we're struggling in order to try and make it better, because we're not just sitting there being the only ones with these things going on. So in the last few minutes, we just literally have time for a couple of questions. What did I saw that would be good? Okay, so let's use this one. So what do you say to researchers who want to be strategic partners but encounter organizational barriers due to lack of buy-in from clients?
Yeah, this. I hope this doesn't sound too naive from me, but the one way that we have really inched our ways into that strategic role is prove the value of research, which means that speak the same language that the rest of the organization is speaking. If they're talking about, number of visits and acquisition and things like that, what research do you have? What insights do you have to help complement or supplement that? And then you're starting to use, you're on the same page with them. You've got the same KPIs. How do you, instead of doing things in your own lane, how do you really look at the organization and say, how can I provide value to the things that they're already looking at and that's already important to them? And that's been really helpful for us.
Yeah. Shelley, Chris, any adds to that, or should we take one more final question?
I mean, I guess I fall on the little, obviously on the ethnographic side of things, I'm the touchy-feely one. So I always have to be mindful of what words I use when I engage folks. But to me, that's kind of like the love language, right? And I will bring that up in every meeting that I typically have. I think it's finding that language and what resonates with folks, whether it's working with your stakeholders or with your clients. And then, the language in between that, right? It is figuring out what resonates with them, what is of importance to them, what their pains are, right? I think that works on both sides of things. And when you can bridge that, that's where the value is. Those are your value adds. And every side has their pains. And the fact that, if I'm hearing this question correctly, that the company already values research, maybe now it's getting the client to see that. I think that's huge. And hats off to our companies that obviously value that, right? I think that's fantastic, and the clients will eventually see that. That just takes a little bit of time.
Yeah, that makes sense. One last question, and it's kind of I pull this one out, and there's others. I'm sorry, we just don't have time to get to them all. But just as we talk about executive buy-in, there is a question, particularly around qualitative research in particular. Have you experiences on, because it is, we've talked about this much more, touchy-feely type of data. Have any of you, I'm going to look at you, Tiffany, because I also know, Chrissy, you're in a qualitative role or ethnography role, so that's there. But where do both of you, Tiffany, I'm going to talk to you as well, because I know that you've got a large-scale qualitative or a longitudinal qualitative community. How does that work in terms of executive buy-in? And did it start out with that buy-in, or did it prove its value, shall we say?
Yeah, no, we are constantly trying to prove our value with that online community. But one of the things that we do is, I really push for methodology agnostic, right? So a lot of the times our stakeholders come to us and say, hey, I want to do a survey on this, or we need to do a focus group on this. And I always try and get them to take a step back and say, what are those questions that you need answers to? And then let's try and figure out the best way to do that. And oftentimes it is through qual, and and we can certainly build a case through that. And then other times it's through quant, or sometimes it's through both, right? But really having really understanding what your overall objective is just provides more value to when you present back that case for, hey, we really need to do a focus group here, and this is why. And our online community is, on one hand, we're always trying to prove the value of it, and then on the other hand, we're just getting all of these different insights that we almost sometimes take for granted, that we've got access to our customers with such a close and tight range. And so always making sure that value is being shown throughout the organization helps with that cause.
Yeah, and I guess I would just kind of caution at times, right, that just because something isn't necessarily quantifiable on the surface doesn't mean it's not valuable. I think, especially like with the ethnographic work, since we've been talking about that, that drives a lot more work strategically, whether it's current and or future state. It also drives people value, to get in front of people and to show them that you care and you're spending time with them and that they matter. That's the core of human-centered design. So I think, it's something that, often we want to throw a bunch of numbers maybe on a dashboard or whatever to show something, but there is all of that work that builds into that. And I think there's importance in that. And I think that's also where storytelling comes into play, and sharing those narratives so that we have that connection to our clients and to our users.
Yeah, makes sense. Shelley, I want to quickly ask, because I know that when you joined 4 years ago, it was to pick up a number of surveys. Do you see, do you anticipate, or have you had any challenges when you thought, okay, this qualitative approach is going to answer those questions better? Or do you think that's going to be a battle for you, or has it been a battle, or is it, again, you've already shown your value, you've done a lot of work in those last few years to build up the value of the insights that you're bringing, and is that accepted?
I think that the organization is excited about more qualitative information. So it's just a matter of figuring out the best, the way to get that. So I think they're looking forward to it. I think when we do deliver, survey results, the open-ended questions are usually what they want to spend the most time talking about. My challenge is to get them to look at them in aggregate instead of just focus on the one fan's complaint about the hot dog being cold.
Yeah.
So, to get the nitty-gritty information, but still deal with it holistically.
That makes sense. I'm going to have to wrap this up. We're literally on the hour. Thank you so much to all of you. I think this has been a great conversation. I've seen comments come in from the audience also saying thank you very much for sharing your perspectives. It's incredibly valuable for everybody. And thank you for everybody on the line. I hope you found this enjoyable and will join us again soon. Have a good day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.